Nathan Carter adjusted his blazer as he stepped into the cool, polished interior of Riverstone Credit Union in Silver Ridge, Montana. The morning had been productive despite the brisk autumn chill, and he was eager to complete this final errand before returning to his office. His leather satchel, worn but elegant, hung at his side as he approached the counter where a young woman, Claire, stood with an air of efficiency, her blonde hair tucked neatly into a bun. "Good morning," Nathan greeted warmly, sliding a check and a small bundle of bills through the opening in the counter. "I'd like to make a deposit." Claire's eyes flicked to the check, then to Nathan, lingering just a moment too long. Her expression grew unreadable, her brows knitting slightly. "This line is reserved for business transactions," she said, gesturing toward another line where a handful of customers waited. Nathan's smile didn't waver. "This is a business transaction. I'm depositing funds into my company's account." Claire's lips tightened. "I'll need to see some identification," she said, her tone clipped. Nathan hesitated for half a beat, surprised by her brusque demeanor, before pulling his wallet from his pocket. He handed her his driver's license without a word, his calm demeanor intact. Claire examined the license with exaggerated scrutiny, flipping it over and holding it up as if inspecting a rare artifact. "This is yours?" she asked, her tone tinged with doubt. "Yes, it is," Nathan replied, a flicker of irritation crossing his features. "Is there a problem?" Rather than answering, Claire set the license aside and picked up the check again, her fingers drumming lightly on the counter. "And where exactly did you get this?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. Nathan's patience began to wear thin. "I issued it. It's from my company, Summit Ventures." "And your role there?" Claire pressed, her tone laced with skepticism. Nathan drew a steadying breath. "I'm the founder and CEO," he said, his voice firm but measured. Claire's smirk was small but unmistakable. Without breaking eye contact, she pressed a button on the intercom. "Security, I may need assistance at the front desk," she said, her tone far too casual, as if reporting a minor inconvenience. Nathan squared his shoulders, his voice cooling. "Is there a reason you feel the need to involve security over a simple deposit?" Claire folded her arms, leaning slightly against the counter. "I'm just following protocol. This check doesn't look right. And frankly, your ID doesn't convince me. Do you have any other identification? A passport, perhaps?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I didn't realize a passport was standard for a routine banking transaction. I carry mine when I travel," Claire quipped, a smug grin playing on her lips. Before Nathan could respond, a tall security guard emerged from a nearby hallway, his posture confident and his gaze sweeping the room. The quiet murmur of other customers faltered as heads turned toward the unfolding scene. "Is there an issue?" the guard asked, his deep voice breaking the tension. Claire gestured toward Nathan. "This gentleman presented a check that doesn't look legitimate, and his ID doesn't seem to match his claims. I'd like to verify it further." Nathan turned to the guard, his calm demeanor now tinged with exasperation. "This is absurd. I'm here to deposit a check from my own company. Everything I've provided is valid." The guard's expression remained neutral as he looked between Nathan and Claire. "Should I contact the authorities?" he asked after a pause. "Not yet," Claire replied, her tone almost triumphant. "Let me confirm the details first. It's from a business called Summit Ventures. Apparently, he's the CEO." Nathan fought to keep his composure. "You could easily verify this by calling the number on the check. It's listed there for a reason." Claire ignored the suggestion, turning to her computer and entering the check details with deliberate slowness. Her eyes darted to Nathan once more. "Do you have any other proof? A business card, perhaps?" Nathan opened his satchel and handed her a sleek business card embossed with the Summit Ventures logo and his contact information. Claire glanced at it briefly before setting it aside without acknowledgement. "We deal with a lot of fraud attempts," Claire remarked as she typed. "You wouldn't believe how many people think they can fool us with fake checks. You might want to rethink your strategy." Nathan's jaw tightened, but he refused to lose his composure. "Is this your standard treatment for customers? Or is there something specific about me that's raising your suspicions?" he asked, his tone cutting through the air like a blade. The room fell into an uneasy silence, the weight of his words hanging heavily between them. Claire hesitated, her confident demeanor briefly faltering before she straightened again. "I'm just doing my job," she said defensively, though her voice carried a defensive edge. "You're the one acting suspicious." The security guard shifted on his feet, clearing his throat to break the tension. "Let's give her a chance to verify the check. It'll clear everything up," he said, his tone steady and impartial. Nathan sighed, taking a step back with a measured nod. "Fine. Go ahead and verify it." Claire's fingers resumed tapping on her keyboard, and she picked up the phone with a determined expression. As the line rang, Nathan crossed his arms, his calm exterior now tightly controlled as frustration simmered beneath the surface. "This is Claire from Riverstone Credit Union," she said briskly into the receiver. "I need to verify a $20,000 check issued by Summit Ventures. May I speak to someone in charge?" Nathan stood in silence, his gaze unyielding as he watched her. Nearby, the security guard remained rooted to his spot, clearly uncomfortable with the growing tension. Meanwhile, the quiet murmur of other customers faded as they subtly tuned into the unfolding drama. "Yes, I'll hold," Claire said curtly, tapping her nails against the desk in irritation as the seconds stretched. When the line connected, Claire's rigid professionalism wavered. Her expression morphed from skepticism to surprise, then to something closer to alarm. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she stammered. "Yes, I have someone here attempting to deposit a check in your name. I just need to confirm its authenticity." Nathan arched an eyebrow, his expression unreadable but faintly expectant as he waited for the inevitable. The color drained from Claire's face as her lips parted, and she stammered into the phone. Yes, of course. My apologies. Thank you." She hung up with shaky hands, avoiding Nathan's gaze as she murmured, "It's been verified." At that moment, Greg, the bank manager, emerged from his office. His calm but authoritative presence brought an immediate shift in the room's atmosphere. His gaze swept the scene, landing on Claire, the security guard, and finally Nathan. "What's happening here?" he asked, his tone calm but firm. Claire attempted to compose herself. "I was just verifying a suspicious check," she said quickly, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Everything's fine now." Nathan stepped forward, his voice steady but tinged with quiet authority. "What she means is that she wrongly accused me of fraud, treated me like a criminal, and ignored every piece of legitimate identification I provided." Greg frowned deeply, his focus narrowing on Claire. "Is this true?" Claire stumbled over her words. I was following policy. It's not my fault," he seemed. Greg held up a hand to stop her. "Enough," he said sharply. Turning to Nathan, he softened. "Mr. Carter, I deeply apologize for this unacceptable treatment. Is there anything I can do to make things right?" Nathan met his gaze evenly. "You can start by addressing the culture that allows this kind of behavior to happen in the first place. This isn't just a misunderstanding. It's systemic disrespect." Greg's jaw tightened as he turned back to Claire. "Claire, you didn't just make a mistake. You disrespected one of our most valued clients based on unfounded assumptions." Claire's face paled. "Client," she whispered. Greg nodded grimly, gesturing toward Nathan. "This is Nathan Carter, the founder and CEO of Summit Ventures. They're one of our most significant business partners. This bank processes millions in transactions for them annually. You just accused the owner of fraud." Claire's voice faltered as she stammered. I didn't know. I was just—" "No," Nathan interrupted, his voice cutting through the room. "You weren't just following policy. You were acting on assumptions, not evidence. I gave you everything you asked for, but it wasn't enough because you'd already decided I didn't belong." Claire looked at the floor, her silence speaking volumes. Greg exhaled slowly, turning back to Nathan. "Mr. Carter, you're absolutely right. This behavior is inexcusable. We'll be reviewing our policies and employee training immediately to ensure this never happens again." Nathan nodded curtly. "Actions matter more than words, Greg. Make sure this isn't just a one-time apology." Greg straightened. "Understood. I'll personally see to it." Gesturing toward his office, Greg added, "If you'll allow me, I'd like to personally complete your transaction." Nathan glanced around the room, noting the curious and subdued stares of other customers. Without a word, he followed Greg into the private office, the air in the lobby heavy with the weight of what had just unfolded. Inside, Greg handled the deposit with professional precision, periodically voicing his regret and ensuring Nathan that changes would follow. Once the transaction was complete, Nathan retrieved his receipt, his movements deliberate. "Greg," he said before leaving, "focus on education. Training your staff to treat everyone with respect is a far more valuable step than replacing one employee with another." Greg nodded, his expression resolute. "You have my word." As Nathan walked out into the crisp autumn sunlight, the scene behind him seemed distant. The air felt lighter now, the weight of the moment giving way to resolve. Before stepping into his car, he paused and looked back at the building, murmuring under his breath, "Let this be a lesson for all of us." Then, he drove away, ready to channel the day's frustrations into meaningful change.